right, you guys, I'm so excited to have Bre here. I've been like stalking her and
whatever. We've been friends for a long time. I just have crazy schedules.
We but we're here together finally.
Yes.
And I'm so excited to have Bre share her light with you today. And honestly, the first time she told me her story, we were in a little restaurant in Salt Lake, and I was like hyperventilating, like it was giving me PTSD. But I'm like, the things that I learned from her that day kind of changed the way I viewed trust. And because her fight has been way different than mine, but her journey to just keep going and to fight those battles that are so hard has been truly inspiring for me. And so I've shared her on stages before, but I wanted to share her here where so many of you come to get inspiration, because she is an inspiration to me. Wow. So Bre, tell us a little bit about where your fight began.
Great. Well, first of all, thanks for having me.
I probably shouldn't have this swivel chair.
And also, I know, I'm getting like... and also that night at dinner too, I think from the night that we met in person and then just our immediate connection of like friendship has totally helped me and has been such a saving grace too. And like sharing the stage with you on your tours has been one of the best learning experiences of my life. And I think the biggest lesson I learned from meeting you that night and then having like our friendship continue is everyone has their fight and you just have to stand up and keep fighting. So a little bit about my fight story. On September 23rd, 2015, so it will be 3 years on Sunday. Yeah.
And did we meet like 1 year anniversary?
Yeah, we met like the day before the 1 year anniversary. Or was it the same day? I can't
remember.
remember.
I think it was the same day.
It might have been the same day.
That's so weird.
Rough.
I didn't even realize that.
It was the same day.
Holy cow. Okay,
yeah, so
cool.
2 years ago. Oh, that's cute.
That's cool. This is our anniversary.
So on September 23rd, 2015, me and my little sister Kaylee had just moved into a duplex downtown Salt Lake City that we were super excited about. We'd lived there for 6 days. We had been roommates before for a few years, just in a different location, and we found this spot. We were super excited about it. We moved in, and technically 5 nights later, I was in my bedroom on my computer just working on some things, and I heard a voice outside my window say, "Hey." I thought, there's no way someone's outside. Like, there's a 7-foot fence around our house. My window's 6 feet off the ground. Like, and I just ignored it and like kept working. And then I heard it again. But when I heard it again, he said, "Hey girl, I'm coming in." And when I turned my head, like from 8 feet away from where I was on my bed to my bedroom window, a very big, huge man was coming in my bedroom window like this. So he'd like propped himself up and he was coming in head first. So my initial thought was, he's going to rape me. So I got off my bed and I ran towards my window thinking that I could like push him out in time. But unfortunately, by the time I got to my window, he was standing up, and that's when every girl's worst nightmare became my reality. And from that moment, I don't know if any of you have had like a scary dream or just a dream where like you can't move, or like you're running, or like like you need to run in your dream but you can't. That's exactly what happened to my body that day. It was like I wanted to fight, but like I couldn't, and I just had my hands up and was like, please no, please no. And he just started beating me up. We've seen surveillance cameras since then that he was like outside my window warming up, fighting like this, which always creeps me out because it was, I mean, obviously it's creepy, but it just proves that it was intentional, that he knew exactly what he was doing and he was coming to hurt me. I had my phone in my hand, my keys were right there on a little bookshelf stand thing I had in my room, and then I had my computer, so I offered him all of those things. Like, I was just thinking, like, he's an addict, he needs some drug money, I'll give him whatever he wants if he'll just like get out of my house. So I offered him all those things, and he said no to all of them. So right then I knew it wasn't a burglary, he wasn't there for anything but me, and he was there to hurt me. And then he covered my mouth, shoved me up against my bedroom door, and told me to shut up and cooperate with him, or he was going downstairs to get my little sister. And when he said that, that was like another like aha moment, I guess, of he's been watching us. He knows Kaylee's younger than me, and he knows that she's downstairs. And it was such a scary feeling because, like I said, we'd only been there for 6 days. Like, how does he know us? How does he know that she's downstairs? When anyone meets Kaylee and myself at the same time, they always figure she's older than me. And so I figured, like, he's had to be watching us for a long time. Anyway, it was just a really scary feeling. So, in a nutshell, luckily, Kaylee was down in the basement. She came running upstairs, and she started physically fighting back. That was like her first reaction. It's really interesting. I've learned since then that only 20% of girls fight back in those situations, leaving 80% of girls to be raped or murdered, or raped and murdered. And that would have been me if Kaylee wasn't there. And she came upstairs, and she started physically fighting, and then he started hitting her. And as soon as I saw him hitting her, that's when it clicked for me. Like, I have got to physically fight back. And so I did whatever I could. I had mace on my pillow, actually. I didn't even think. Yeah.
Like you sleep
and I didn't
with
even
mace.
know.
You just snuggle on up.
Just snuggle up. Now you bet I have like bear spray mace. I'm just kidding. But at the time, it was just like I had unpacked this, like the very last box. It was like a shoe box that we brought over from our other house. There was bear spray, 2 things of mace. So I threw one downstairs for Kaylee to take to her room. Then I put the bear spray in the kitchen drawer, and then I put another thing of mace. I just like threw it on my bed that night. And then I didn't even remember that it was there until I talked to the detective afterward. And she was like, "Oh, well, you had mace on your pillow." And I was like, "Oh. Shoot, wouldn't have done anything." Anyway, so
that would have been helpful earlier.
Probably. So, now I'm like thinking of bear spray and mace. Anyway, I didn't even think to get it. And then, we're in the kitchen and we're physically fighting. And I thought, there's like knives in our kitchen drawer. But it was just, there wasn't time for that. And everything was happening so quickly. And I didn't want him. I knew like from when I was little, if you're ever in a situation like that, do not go to a second location. So I just kept thinking, we cannot go down to the basement. Like, if anything, we just have to stay upstairs. So I was like trying to get him into our living room or into our dining room, just away from the basement, because I knew our chances of surviving were going to drop dramatically if we went downstairs. As soon as I had that thought, he picked me up like a little rag doll and like threw me right in front of our basement stairs. And that was another sign that he had he knew the layout of our house, and he had a plan, that this was all planned out. Luckily, like I said, Kaylee came upstairs fighting, and so when I saw Kaylee fighting back, that's when I knew that I needed to physically fight back, which has been a huge learning experience for me, and the fact that in our darkest, scariest moments, there are times that we have to fight for ourselves. And for a long time, I felt so guilty when he came through my bedroom window and I didn't fight back. I didn't feel strong. I felt like, I deserved it or something. I don't know, just a lot of like survivor guilt, victim guilt.
Like those beliefs that just haunted you.
Yeah.
Right.
But I just knew that the way that I fought back kept me safe when I needed to be safe. And then when I saw Kaylee fighting for me, that's when I knew I needed to fight for Kaylee. And just sometimes in our lives, we're in these terrible, terrible places. We have to do what we need to do for ourselves, but then we need to help other people. And when we help other people, we help ourselves and we help other people, then we can be saved. Or we're saved, or we're healed, or whatever it may be. Anyway, our fight continued. He kicked Kaylee down the stairs. There's 17 stairs. Her head went through the wall at the bottom of the stairs. It's a 3-foot wall, the only wall in our entire house, not made of brick. And then doctor, specialist, whoever has seen it, said that she should have been either like paralyzed, dead, or at least like knocked out. She did get a concussion. She doesn't remember anything upstairs. And then he pushed me down the stairs. But before he pushed me down the stairs, I'm on my knees. I'm like holding on to his shorts, and I'm just punching him as hard as I can, where I've been taught my entire life to hit a boy, and nothing was happening.
Where's that?
Just right in the you-know-what. I'm still too immature to say it. gotta grow up. So anyway, I'm hitting him, I'm punching him, and then I thought like, okay, extend, like I'm hitting him like this, nothing. I'm like using my elbow.
Yeah, no feeling.
No feeling. So then I was like, holy crap, he is on some, I don't know what drug, but he is on something that this, like, we're in for a freaking long night if this isn't hurting him. And it was also scary because it was like, this is what girls are taught to do. And like, gouge his eyes, hit him in the throat, hit him in the groin. And we were trying to do all those things and nothing was working. He was 6'2", 210 pounds. I'm 5'3", Kaylee's 5'3" or 4. She'll probably say she's 5'4". I hope she's not watching. I don't know how tall she is. Anyway, yeah, so she's a little bit taller than me, but we're both like fairly small, petite little girls. So we didn't stand, I mean, realistically, like we didn't stand a chance, but it doesn't matter your size, girls, everybody watching.
That's right.
If you fight back, you can do it. Anyway, so we fight back. He pushes me down the stairs, and then we were at the bottom of the stairs for what seems like forever, just fighting and fighting and fighting. And we were asking our phones to call 911. I won't do it now because I don't want to interrupt our live. And Siri said, "I'm sorry, Bre, I don't understand." And I was so annoyed with her. I did it 3 times, the same result. It's like, I have had her, Siri, for like 6 years. And the fact that she thought my name was Bre pissed me off more than like her not calling 911. But anyway, so she didn't call 911, so I told her to call my dad. She starts calling my dad, and then I just thought, like, what the heck, like, he can't do anything. He's 45 minutes away. So I, right then, our attacker, I hung up, and then I was able to dial 911 because my phone was unlocked. I saw that they picked up. I turned the speaker towards me, and for over a minute, I just yelled, 850 South Roberta Street, 850 South Roberta Street. And that's another thing, is like growing up, if you call 911, what do?
Tell them
your address. Like if you can't tell them anything else, tell them your address and someone will come. The fact that we even remembered our address in the first place after only living there for 6 days is like a miracle in and of itself. Unfortunately, not one of our calls was dispatched. And that's been kind of a frustrating thing of our story. We still don't technically have answers as to why they weren't dispatched. On my call, you can just hear the dispatcher saying, "Hello, hello." And then on Kaylee's call, she was able to call 3 times, and the dispatch is like telling her to calm down and stop screaming so they can understand her, which you can clearly understand our address. And that's a little like, that's been kind of a hard thing for me to get over, just because I think of us that night and I think of women or children in similar situations, and it's not acceptable. So we're hopefully trying to make some changes there. Anyway, our attacker figured out what we were doing, and in one of the 911 calls, you can actually hear him say, "Stop." And so he ends my phone call.
Oh my gosh.
And that, I'm proud to say, stopping is the last thing we did that night, and it's the last thing I've done since then. We just figured, like, okay, we need to keep fighting, I couldn't hear Kaylee screaming. It's like strangling her up against the wall. I was able to like tackle him into our laundry room. Now I'm laying on my back, he's on top of me, and I reached over to grab a pencil, and my plan was like to gouge his eyes out, which is creepy and weird, but do what you gotta do. So I went to grab something, and our basement's completely dark. You can't see anything at all. And it was like a flashlight was shining on the knife. I could see it perfectly. And if I didn't see the knife, I wouldn't have known he was stabbing me because I didn't feel anything. And then he started stabbing me, and I told Kaylee that he had a knife, that she needed to go and get more help, and she said that she wasn't leaving me. And luckily, she ended up leaving the basement, and I think that is like the greatest act of love anyone has ever done for me. I can't imagine being in her shoes and having to make that choice to leave her sister with this monster, but she knew that if she didn't, then I wasn't going to make it. So she leaves and she's running up the stairs. She turned the kitchen light on, and by the time she was like running up the stairs, she heard me saying, "He's stabbing me, he's stabbing me." And that's the last thing she heard, and she ran outside. Luckily, a police officer, Officer Ben Hone, which shout out to him, and also shout out to Salt Lake City Police Department for letting us use their media room today, and first of all for hiring Ben like 10 years ago. So shout out there. Anyway, he's like, he's driving in a different direction. He's on his way home, and he hears Kaylee screaming. So he's a few blocks away. He can hear Kaylee screaming. He was not dispatched to our call. And he pulled down our street. At first he thought because she was so upset and she's in her underwear and a t-shirt just screaming at the top of her lungs, like, get down there, he's killing her, he's hurting her. So he goes to get his canine in the back of his truck, and then he thinks if I get this canine out, he's gonna attack this girl. And he overheard Kaylee say like he's stabbing her, and he didn't want to put his canine in like a situation where it could get killed.
Right.
So he decided to leave Ted in his truck, and then he followed Kaylee up to our house. Meanwhile, I'm in the basement. I was stabbed multiple times in the stomach and in the leg, and then my attacker stood up and put his head over his left shoulder and said, "I'm going to get your little sister," and then he laughed. And
He laughed?
He laughed, yeah. And that, I don't know, it's like he did a lot of terrible things that night. But when he was laughing at that, I was so angry. It was just like, how sick and how evil can someone be that not only they like come into my room and do everything else he did, but then he laughs about it. And being stabbed and being so tired from fighting and I just gave up, like whatever. But then I thought of him obviously going to get Kaylee, and that was not an option for me. So I was able to pull him back down. And then we had like this fight on the ground. Then he picks me up. He has his knife at my throat. My feet are dangling. He's a lot taller than I am. And I gave up. I was so tired. I can't even express like how tired my body was. And it wasn't like I'm tired, I want to go to sleep. It was like I was losing so much blood or something. I was like dying. Like I couldn't do it anymore. And then something inside of me just said, fight. Like, keep fighting. And that's kind of become my life mantra, I guess you could say. It's like, just keep fighting. And that's what I did. I kicked something, it knocked us back down into the laundry room. And so now I'm like laying on his chest. He wraps his legs up and over me, his arm around my arm, and then his knife is like at my throat. And I remember like holding it down and just saying like, please no, please no. And then I remember him flexing to like slit my throat. And I went and moved my head over a little bit just to like save some time. And right when I moved my head over, I saw two black shoes coming down my stairs and heard the Salt Lake City Police drop the knife. And Officer Hone followed Kaylee into our house. She like quarterbacked him the whole way, told him what to do, told him not to turn the light on. And then he went downstairs without a flashlight, by himself, without waiting for backup. And from about 8 feet away in the dark, he gave the attacker 2 more chances to drop his knife. My attacker didn't. Instead, he extended his arm and told him to step back because he's going to stick me. And when he extended his arm, his head came out from behind my head, and so our faces were touching. And Officer Hone took one shot, and that one shot took my attacker's life and saved mine and Kaylee's. So,
I wish we had an audience here.
No, I guess we kind of do.
Well, yeah, we do. That's true. It's not just me. Even feels like her bawling like a baby.
But from that moment, well, I didn't know this until like a few months after, but I guess I like went up to Ben to give him a hug, and he was like, you came up to me with your arms up, and I was like saying thank you, and I wanted to hug him, and he was like, I was bleeding, there was so much blood everywhere, that he was like, don't touch me. And he told me to go upstairs, and so I ran up the stairs, and all I wanted to see was Kaylee. And there is not a moment in my life that will ever match that moment of happiness and gratitude when I turned my head to the right and I saw Kaylee for the first time. And she just said, Bre, and I just remember she covered her mouth, and we were safe. We were okay. And we were okay and we were safe because we fought, and we fought for each other, and it was like this sister power, this like love for each other that made her leave my basement, that made her get up from bed and come up and fight for me, and then leave the basement and find Officer Hone. Officer Hone is our angel. I love him so much.
I think you had a lot of angels that
Yes,
night.
we did. We had a lot of angels that night. but there would be no Officer Hone without Kaylee. And so out of all of our angels, she's my top.
That's for
But
sure.
and then I think from there I went to, I laid on the porch for over a half hour waiting to be taken to the hospital. I was laying in Kaylee's lap, and we finally go to the University of Utah Hospital. I went alone. Kaylee went to interviews and other random stuff, which, whatever. I think she should have been at the hospital also, but so she goes and she does these interviews. I'm at the hospital by myself for about 6 hours, and I'm laying in the emergency room, still thinking I'm going to die. I should have been dead. There were prison stabs. Everywhere where he stabbed me was at least 4.5 inches deep. So the prison stabs are the stabs that are supposed to kill people the fastest. And I got to the ER. They took 3 CT scans and an ultrasound. And I remember there's all these doctors around me. They closed down the emergency room because they didn't know if it was gang related or not. People are like, it's just hectic. But I was just laying there, just calm. And I just figured, I just thought I was gonna die, and I was also just very tired. And then I remember one doctor came in and he had all 6 of these fingers, and he put them in this wound, and he just said, "I think you missed." And every other doctor around him said, "There's no way." And sure enough, he missed every vital organ, every vital vein. They stitched me up, and I went home that night. So I got there at about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I left at about 11:30 p.m. I thought my fight was over, but that's when I learned that my fight actually started that day.
For sure.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
tell us a little more about your fight since then.
Yeah. Excuse me. So I think a lot of times, I have the best support system, the best family, the best friends, the best examples, but there was still something that and it's kind of hard to put into words. I'm still trying to figure it all out. But everyone was coming over, and they meant so well, and I'm so grateful, so please don't take this the wrong way. But everyone's asking, how are your stab wounds? How are you healing? And yeah, they hurt really bad, and it sucked, and it was terrible and terrifying. But it's those healed. And after 6 weeks, I was able to live a normal life again, and I was okay. But, and that's another thing that I think is just society that's made it hard. But I was just battling. I just had this inner battle of my physical wounds are okay, but my emotional and mental wounds are whacked. I need help right now. I'm not gonna make it. There still are times that I wish he would have just killed me. There are times that it's depression, anxiety, fear, low self-esteem. There are times where I'm I would 100% rather fight a 6'2" bald ex-con for as long as I did, be stabbed again, than deal with the depression and not being able to leave my bedroom, or the anxiety of walking somewhere and just knowing someone's going to kill me and feeling like I'm going to have a heart attack, and just kind of being taken out of that world of, I don't know, it was a fear. Yeah. And fear is debilitating. It can be very debilitating, and depression is debilitating. And I'm embarrassed to say that before all of this, I was really ignorant to mental and emotional fights. And I'm glad. Sometimes I wish that I could have learned that lesson a different way, but I don't know if I would have been able to. And so I'm actually very grateful for my experience, because it's given me the ability to be more empathetic towards mental illness and just emotional trauma and people's fights. And a lot of times people will say, "Well, I've never been through anything like you've been through." And I'm always "Oh, girl, yes, you have." That attempted murder, obviously, it's rare and it's terrifying and scary. But it doesn't matter the fight. A fight is a fight, and it's hard. And if you don't know other fights, that fight is just as hard as my fight, Mm-hmm. And it was having to learn that I've started speaking and doing a lot like you.
She's an amazing amazing speaker. If you ever get a chance to see her, this
Hit
is
me
just
up.
this is just a fraction of her story, and you would be so grateful to hear the whole
Sweet.
thing.
But in speaking, and like I started talking about the importance of physical defense, because at first I was like, every single girl needs to know that they need to physically fight back. Like, I do not want another girl to be in my position where she was too scared or she was manipulated by her attacker's nice voice. My attacker had this really nice voice, and every time he used it, I fell for it and I would stop physically fighting. Kaylee didn't fall for that crap one time. And people are different, and that's okay. And I can't be like ashamed of how I fought back. I fought back and it worked out, and that's okay. But my mission at first was like, physical self-defense is so important, which it is, and I still push physical self-defense. But I created a company or an organization called Fight Like Girls, where we raise awareness that self-defense is just as mental, emotional, and spiritual as it is physical. And it doesn't start when you're attacked. Self-defense needs to be like a self-care. It needs to start before, heaven forbid, something like that happens.
Totally.
And after. It's an ongoing thing. And so that's kind of where I'm at, is just to raise awareness of fighting back.
Do you think
in all of those?
establishing confidence in yourself is one of those first steps to really,
100%.
like, you're not going to fight unless you believe in yourself in every
100%.
aspect, spiritual, mental,
Yeah.
physical.
Yeah, and I think rebuilding my self-esteem from being in a basement with a complete stranger. He didn't know my name. He didn't know literally anything about me. And he would have rather been shot in the face than to drop the knife and just let me live. That destroyed my self-esteem for a very long time. And even still thinking about it, I'm like, wow. And it's really interesting how the mind works, and how I think women, we're just so hard on ourselves no matter what, which is an unfortunate thing. And something else that, like, we just need to be like on the same team all the time. But we're already, like, life is already hard as is, and then adding stuff like that. So yeah, self-care and like self-love I think is the very, very first step. And I have this little, I call it the survivor cycle of, you have to find hope in something that's bigger and greater than you. In my case, it's that there is a heavenly Father and a heavenly Mother, godly parents, and that there is something more for us. In someone else's case, maybe their hope comes from astrology. Maybe their hope comes from energy or
Right.
whatever. And it's like finding that
Connecting
hope.
to that.
Yeah, connecting to something and knowing that this isn't it. But then helping yourself. But I think that, like, helping yourself includes helping others. And I think, like, starting, and I'm sure you'll agree, that as soon as I started sharing my story, as hard and tiring, exhausting as it is basically all the time I share it, it's so rewarding at the same time, because I can see it's helping, and then that in turn helps me. So it's almost like a selfish thing, but it's a good selfish thing, that it's like, it's healing. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a question. There's a lot of people that are stuck in that fear and stuck in the victimhood of their story.
Totally.
If you could go back to yourself that night, or to these women or men who are stuck in that moment that just keeps replaying and being triggered, what truths would you give yourself that you didn't have in that moment?
That's a really good question. And it's really interesting. I think as like time goes on, and you'll probably agree that at first it's like, okay, like I've grown so much, like I've done, and I have, but then it is also kind of comical almost. Maybe comical is the wrong word, but it's just like, dang, I was still in the freaking depths then, you know?
Yeah.
But I think the truth is, the power to fight back is inside of you. And my personal belief is, if a higher power created me, then that high power, the highest power of powers, has to be in me. So if that's true, if I really believe that, it was like my spirituality journey, if I really believe that, then what can't I do? And so it was kind of like, I needed that reminder. But also just, like, you can have all these reminders, you can have these mentors, you can have all these good things, but you're still going to go back there. You're still going to have really sucky days.
And that's normal.
And it's normal, and it's okay. And so I think it's just, sucky days are okay. If you want a day in to Netflix and eat ice cream with your blinds closed, have that day. Feel those feelings. I think a lot of times people are like afraid to feel those feelings. It's okay. Those feelings are part of grieving. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. But don't stay there. Have a sad day, and then the next day, make yourself open your blinds. Make your bed. If that's all you're doing, you're a champion. You made the fight that day. So I think just be kind to yourself, but just keep going.
Excuse me. Okay, so somebody is stuck in that fear still. Like their triggers are keeping them there, and they're not stepping outside of that comfort zone in any way. Tell us a little bit about maybe the first time. I know we've talked about both of us had a hard time walking into public things. Tell me the first time you were like, you know what? I'm stepping out of this comfort zone, and I'm gonna just move forward, whatever that looks like today.
I think I had a lot of first times. One of them being, it sounds like so silly, but for a long time, for almost a year, I couldn't sleep in a bedroom. So I was sleeping on a couch, or like when I stayed at my parents' for 6 months after the attack, we had like a mattress downstairs in the family room, and my sweet brother would sleep on the couch next to me every night.
Sorry,
it's okay. Or my dad would sleep on the couch next to me. So I think it's really important. You have to find a safe place, whether that's a person that you can call and talk to when you're in those really dark places. Find your safe place. But I think it was just like, I was so tired, and I was just so, I was so grateful, but I was so sick of not being like the independent, happy, go-getter Bre, that I just remember one day being like, this is probably inappropriate, but just like, F this, like, it's time to move on.
Right.
And it was just like, I'm done. And that was like the first thing that comes to mind is I wanted to go on a run. I would run all the time. I'd like run up to Ensign Peak or around the Utah State Capitol or whatever. And I wasn't doing that because I was so scared, and there's so many triggers downtown Salt Lake and blah, blah, blah. But I love downtown Salt Lake, and I shouldn't not live here because of Berger, who's dead nonetheless. Like, he can't hurt me anymore. So I remember I was in my room, and it was like 1 o'clock. I was still in bed. I was still sad. It was just a really, really hard day. And I just had that thought, like, he is dead. He literally can't hurt me. The only person hurting me now is me. And then I was like, oh, whoa, that's a whole new perspective.
I better write that down.
Like, you bet, like, that's copyrighted. Just kidding. But anyway, it was like a truth to me. And then I just remember I put my running shoes on, and I went on my very first run that day. And it was like the most empowering, just like the strongest I've ever felt was that day of just like running around. And it was...
And you're like, nobody can stop me.
Nobody can stop me.
I get to own this story.
Yeah. The next day I was probably back in my bed.
That's
sad,
okay.
But it was okay because I had that day where I felt backward, you know?
Yeah. Some days we go forward, some days we go back a little bit.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, does anybody have any questions for Bre? We're kind of like awkwardly shaped in here.
No, hopefully, let's see. Oh, wait. We can scroll and see if I saw some people. Okay, wait, here's some. Wait. Okay, well, people are just being so kind. Thank you so much. What was the reason the guy came into your house? Okay, so Abby Grover asked why he came into our house, to rape and kill us. That's what he was telling us. And then there was one part in our fight where he had both of us in headlocks, and he looked at both of us like this and was like, damn, I didn't think you were going to be this strong. And then later he was telling me that instead of raping and killing me, he was going to kill me and then rape my dead body. So that was his unfortunate...
You need to put that on your mirror. Damn, I didn't know you two were going to do
like
this.
you walked into the wrong house, you jackie.
Okay, you guys.
Okay.
Any more questions? Well, if you guys have questions, leave them in the comments, and Bre will come in.
Here's one. Okay, sorry. Can I hurry and do this one real quick? Get a gun. I sleep with mine next to me when my husband is gone and all the dogs in the home alarm system. Okay. Yes, guns have been like a very big topic that people bring up. I am pro guns. If people want to carry guns, that's wonderful. But for me, they're also... it's also really scary. Yeah. And with how fast, after living through a situation like that, there was no time to act. He came in so quickly. So yeah, there are safety precautions that I take, and I take them very seriously. And a gun just isn't one of those right now. Not to say that it won't be in the future.
I struggle with that one too.
Yeah.
I think sometimes when violence is involved, that is a trigger. Just like this,
Yeah.
a picture of a gun, sometimes passing it, I'm like,
Oh, same.
whew, I'm okay. It's gonna
Yeah,
be okay.
same.
So, but if that works for you, that's a great
Yeah, that's
idea
great.
for
And
people
you
that
keep
it works
and
for.
you keep it ready to go. So
For sure, we're really bright.
I know we are. Quick.
This room.
Well,
Okay,
I love
so
you.
Bre, I love you. Where can people find more of your goodness?
Yeah, so just really exciting. Fight Like Girls, we're having a little reboot going on right now. So a lot of really good things are coming. We're kind
Yay.
of taking like a Muhammad Ali vibe. So it's like a boxing ring, if you will. And each corner is a different defense. So we have a physical defense corner, spiritual, mental, and emotional, where in each corner we will share different resources, reminders, and different things for you and your fight to help you keep fighting, and just to remind you that we're in your corners.
Awesome. So
Good
Fight Like
idea.
Girls on Facebook.
So Fight Like Girls on Facebook, at Fight Like Girls on Instagram, and then fightlikeGirls.org. You can
Okay.
find everything there.
Go check her out, and if you ever get a
Yes.
chance to listen to her speak or need a presenter, she's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you guys for following.
Thank you.
You're in good hands here. See ya.
Bye.